All right, so let's look at some of the sentences that were in the pre-quiz that you took and break down why they're independent or dependent. So remember, independent means it's a complete sentence and can stand by itself. Dependent means it's a sentence fragment. It has to be attached to an independent clause or something else to make it to be able to stand on its own, because it can't as is. So let's find the subject and predicate in every sentence. So the subject will be red and predicate will be blue. So this first one, I am noticing many stories. So we have the subject here is I. That is the subject. And then am noticing. So here, this is easier if you've learned a foreign language, but am, is, was, these are all verbs meaning like be. They're like a state of being, to be. So this is a verb. So am noticing is kind of like a two-part verb. I am noticing many stories. So this a whole thing is actually the predicate, because this is the object of the verb, but just focus on, yep, we've got a subject and we have what the subject is doing. This is an independent clause. It can stand on its own. So let's look at the next one. While I was studying at the library. So here, we actually don't know if there is a subject at all. There is a noun, I, and maybe I is the sentence, but what we actually have here with this word while is a unit of time. So while makes this whole thing dependent. If we took this off, I was studying at the library, then we'd have an independent clause, because I is the subject, was studying is the predicate, was studying at the library. So it would work by itself, but when you add this word while, now it's a dependent clause and it's a sentence fragment. So you could say, while I was studying at the library, my friends showed up and we got kicked out or something. You know, you could add anything at the end. Or at the beginning, you can say, I got lots of homework done while I was studying at the library. So you see, it needs to be attached to something that's complete. It doesn't work on its own because the word while makes it a unit of time. So watch for these tricky words at the beginning. They are gonna be a big clue as to whether it's dependent or independent. So let's look at this next one. This is it. This is not a very interesting sentence, but it actually is independent. So this is the subject, because while it's not specific, it is a noun. So this, it's not specifying what this is, but it is a specific noun that's being the subject. Is, as I mentioned, is a verb. It means to be. So is, was, am, those are all verbs. So this is it. So it completes the predicate. This is it. While boring and unspecific is actually an independent clause because it has all the necessary elements. Now let's look at this last one. Those who are struggling to understand. So this one, we can figure out our subject, which is those who are struggling to understand. But notice this whole thing is actually the subject. It's all about those. So instead of just saying those by itself, those is different than this. Those who are struggling to understand, you're describing who the subject is, but they're not doing anything. They are struggling to understand, yes, but this is not an action in this sense. This is describing who they are. They are the ones who are struggling to understand. So you could say those who are struggling to understand, subject, should talk to the teacher. So should talk is the action that the subject is doing. So right now, this is just a dependent clause. It's describing the subject very in depth, so it's long, and there is a verb in it, but it is not the predicate. It's not the verb of the subject. It's just giving description about who the subject is. So I know this is a little bit tricky, but just when you read it out loud, just does it feel complete? That's a good test. So I'm noticing many stories. Yeah, cool, that feels good. While I was studying at the library, feels a little off, like it doesn't quite feel complete. This is it. Yeah, it's again, a little weird, but it works. And then those who are struggling to understand. That one really is like, okay, what? Those who are struggling to understand, now what? So when in doubt, if you're not sure, try reading it out loud and see how it feels. That can be a really good bet. So this is what you did in the pretest. Let's practice a little bit more, see how you do.